This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Health authorities declare a new Ebola outbreak in the DRC after 4 people die of the virus. Tens of U.S. cities impose curfews while National Guard troops fight to contain anti-racism protests. And on International Children's Day, we focus on the plight of the African child during pandemic lockdowns. This is Africa Live. A warm welcome. I am Peninah Karibe. Joining me in studio with the business headlines is Rama.
Thank you very much, Peninah. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. The DRC has suspended the board and the management of the state-controlled diamond mining company. We'll have the details. And South Africa's mining operations resume at full capacity from the start of the month of June. We'll have the details on those stories and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Peninah.
Thank you, Rama. And we begin in the United States, where protests and riots continue across the country. Curfews are largely being ignored in many cities as anger continues over the killing of an African-American man, George Floyd, by a white police officer in Minneapolis last week. National Guard troops have been deployed in 15 states and the capital in an attempt trying to tell the world that there are still 2 Americas, black and white, and that this needs to change. Meanwhile, Zimbabwe on Monday summoned the United States ambassador to the country and told him it is not and has never been an adversary of the United States. This follows statements by U.S. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien that Zimbabwe was among 4 nations seeking to take advantage of ongoing anti-racism protests.
During Monday's meeting, Zimbabwe's Foreign Minister Sibusiso Moyo told the U.S. Ambassador Brian Nichols that Zimbabwe was astonished and deeply concerned by the allegations made by Robert O'Brien, which are false and without any factual foundation. He said the statements were deeply damaging to a relationship already complicated by years of prescriptive megaphone diplomacy and punitive economic sanctions. Despite that and repeated interference in its internal affairs, Zimbabwe's government has repeatedly said it seeks a normal, cooperative relationship with the U.S. that's based on mutual understanding, respect, and non-interference. The foreign minister says going forward, Zimbabwe hopes the U.S. can be more even-handed in its treatment of Zimbabwe and acknowledge some of the reforms undertaken by President Emmerson Mnangagwa since he took office in late 2017. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Let's head over now to the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Health Ministry has announced a second Ebola outbreak in the western part of the country. The new outbreak is over 1,000 kilometers away from the current outbreak in the east, which was nearing its end. 5 people have tested positive. Let's get more from our correspondent, Chris Ochamringa. He joins us on the phone from Kinshasa. Chris, what is the genesis of this new outbreak and what more do we know about the patients and their contacts?
Well, Peninah, the health expert, that outbreak killed 33 people. It was quickly contained by the international community together with the local authorities. And we have heard from the World Health Organization Director General. He's saying their teams have already been sent to that, and they're going to start doing the contact tracing and treating the 2 people who are still alive. We have been told that there are 5 people who tested positive. 4 of them have already died, and so there's 1 person who's still alive. Peninah?
And Chris, I mean, the country was just about to declare victory against Ebola in the east. How is this news being received by authorities on the one hand and citizens on the other?
Well, that's right. The DRC has gone for 33 days without registering any Ebola case in the east, the epicenter of the outbreak in Beni. And so people are waiting for 9 days to elapse so that the World Health Organization and the local authorities here can declare the 10th Ebola outbreak over. So this news is very, very upsetting to many people. The authorities the Minister of Health held a press conference this morning and was urging people, to just continue respecting the health regulations, constant washing of hands, and avoiding to touch dead bodies of people who have died of causes that they're not sure of, and also, working with the health authorities to report any new case. The whole health authorities are also very disappointed, but, they're saying, look, this thing has happened. It's beyond our control. We just have to now manage to stop it from spreading. But the local people, some of the local people I've spoken to, are very disappointed and also suspicious. They believe that this could be a money-making scheme by the authorities, to declare this outbreak to declare this new outbreak so that they can get money from the international community. But officials at the national laboratory here in Kinshasa have confirmed that indeed these cases have been are of Ebola. And so it's a very sad moment for the DRC that's facing many other epidemics, measles and COVID-19, and also there's a lot of conflict in the east. So the government is really stretched, in trying to contain all these problems that it's facing.
Yeah, it's quite a challenging time indeed for DRC. Chris, thank you very much for that update. Chris Ochamringa online for us from Kinshasa. Let's go to Somalia now, where a bus explosion killed at least 10 people on Sunday. The attack occurred along a key route linking the capital Mogadishu with surrounding towns. Here's CGTN's Abdulaziz Bilo with more details.
The blast ripped through a minivan transporting passengers heading to Mogadishu. The twisted remains of the passenger bus is being pulled away by local authorities as families mourn the loss of loved ones killed in a deadly blast along the Mogadishu-Afgoye highway.
I was among the first people to arrive at the scene of the blast. We managed to take serious cases to hospitals. Only 3 people survived, including 2 men and 1 woman.
The majority of the serious cases were brought to the Medina hospital. No group has claimed responsibility, but Al-Shabaab is known to carry out roadside bombs along the same road.
We have received 13 incidents at our hospital. 7 of them seriously injured people with head wounds. We are currently treating them. We also received 6 bodies. We haven't seen such cases in recent months, but we will try our best to save their lives.
The country's police have announced a formal investigation into Sunday's deadly landmine blast and are now pointing fingers at the Al-Qaeda-affiliated group Al-Shabaab.
22 people were traveling in the minivan behind me. 3 people survived. The rest either died or were injured. We have taken some to Medina and other hospitals in Mogadishu. It's clear from what happened today that the terrorist group has no regard for civilians.
The road between Mogadishu and the agricultural town of Afgoye is under renovation. A Turkish company is working on the multi-million-dollar project. There have been several attacks targeting Turkish engineers in the past months. In December last year, the group claimed responsibility for a bomb blast in Mogadishu that killed at least 90 people, mostly civilians, the 3rd deadliest attack in the country's history. Analysts say the militant group is opposed to economic development and will stop at nothing to disrupt renovations of roads linking the region to the capital. The latest blast comes less than a week after another roadside bomb killed scores of government troops in the Middle Shabelle region. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
All right, to the COVID-19 update now. Africa has recorded over 147,000 cases with nearly 62,000 recoveries. The continent continues to battle the coronavirus. Africa continues to record the lowest death toll globally. It currently stands at over 4,000. Experts are, however, warning that the continent's health systems could be overwhelmed should Africa face a severe COVID-19 outbreak. Now, with nearly 44,000 cases, Northern Africa has the highest number of infections on the continent. Egypt has reported over half the cases in the region. The Health Ministry has also designated 320 hospitals to treat and receive COVID-19 patients. In West Africa, Ghana's churches and mosques will be allowed to reopen starting Friday. A maximum of 100 people will be allowed to convene for 1 hour, according to the country's new directive on public gathering. In East Africa, Rwanda has recorded its first death. A 65-year-old truck driver Authorities say he had contracted the virus while in Tanzania and returned to the country in critical condition. In Central Africa, Cameroon has the highest in the region. With over 6,000 reported cases, the country reopened schools on Monday despite increasing numbers of infection. Now let's take a closer look at Southern Africa. South Africa has reported most of the cases in the region. The government has further eased lockdown restrictions, but it's delayed reopening schools by a week after strong opposition from the teachers' unions. Meanwhile, Uganda has recorded its biggest single-day rise in COVID-19 cases. Leon Sinyange has the details.
The Health Ministry confirmed 84 new cases on Saturday. The majority of cases were truck drivers arriving from South Sudan through the Elegu border point.
There could be mixing of these truck drivers, and we hope that there will be joint teams after the heads of state of the East African bloc agree, such that we have exchange teams on their side to supplement each other, such that we have concerted response efforts.
Concerns are also rising after 7 frontline workers tested positive for COVID-19. The infected workers include 3 nurses, 2 doctors, and 2 senior level staff.
We have sent a team composed of infection prevention control experts, psychosocial teams, and also case management to investigate the circumstances under which these health workers unfortunately contracted the infection. It's based on that we will be able to know how this happened.
The cases come days before a possible end to a national lockdown. The health ministry is worried there will be more cases if the restrictions are lifted, despite government making it mandatory to wear face masks while outdoors as a measure to prevent the spread of the virus.
People without symptoms or just developing symptoms could infect many people before we know they are infected. With the current pandemic, everyone is potentially infectious.
Uganda registered its first COVID-19 case in March. The country has so far registered 72 recoveries with no death. While the country slowly gets back to normalcy, the surge in cases is causing concern. More restrictions are expected when President Yoweri Museveni delivers yet another address at the end of a 21-day lockdown. Leon Sinyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Let's go back to our top story at this hour. We started in the United States, where curfews are largely being ignored in many cities as anger continues over the killing of an African-American man, George Floyd, in Minneapolis last week. National Guard troops have been deployed in 15 states and the capital in an attempt to restore order. Let's cross over to Washington, D.C., from where our reporter Owen Fairclough is joining us live. Owen, what's the latest at this hour on these protests and how many U.S. cities have been affected so far?
Well, you can probably see here in Washington, D.C., it's a very different atmosphere to around 12 hours ago. You can probably see just behind me here peaceful, good-natured protests that have the support of the traffic here. We are just meters from the White House, where the U.S. President Donald Trump is once again grappling with the aftermath of America's unresolved racial wounds being reopened in the most explosive way. Violent unrest in some 24 cities across the United States, including Minneapolis, of course, where Floyd George died a week ago this Monday. Those questions specifically for African Americans, those questions once again for people of color and African Americans, yet another African American dying under arrest, and this is what's triggered this outrage across the United States. Here in Washington, D.C., there were protests, a second successive night of protests overnight on Sunday, on Monday. You mentioned a curfew that was in force from 11 p.m. until 6 a.m., but many people stayed out beyond that curfew time to protest right here in front of the White House. Just a week ago or so, President Donald Trump was grappling with the coronavirus infecting the White House. Now he has this explosive, unresolved problem dating back really to the Civil War and slavery right on his doorstep. And you can see these people continuing to demonstrate, continuing to ask for answers about why African Americans continue to die in police custody.
You know, Owen, African countries see protests fairly regularly, but this phenomenon of police and protesters going down on their knees, I mean, that's a bit surprising for those outside of the US. Explain it for us.
That's right, we're seeing police officers, security officials across the United States, that very, very placatory gesture that appears to have been very well received, judging from the images that we're seeing, police officers going down on one knee and offering their hand to the crowd, or even to the crowds of protesters. We're even getting reports that some police officers are joining these protests. And of course, that very act of going down on one knee has very, very historical connotations, particularly in the light of Black Lives Matter. And you remember the NFL, American football star Colin Kaepernick, making this whole thing go viral and protesting ongoing police brutality against African Americans. And it's also something that President Donald Trump, that enraged President Donald Trump. He thought that it was disrespectful, of course, to the US national anthem. And yet here we have police officers trying to placate the crowd while the US president is ramping up the rhetoric, blaming a small minority of radical left-wing protesters for the violence across the United States, and encouraging governors with whom he met at the White House earlier this Monday to do more, to use more force against those violent protesters.
And Owen, how is the White House reacting to criticism from Iran and China on racism and the handling of the protests?
It seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it? It was just Friday, of course, that President Donald Trump came out of the White House to say that the US would begin, would certainly put under review and begin changing the relationship, the special relationship it has with Hong Kong, because of that security law that Beijing is adopting, has made a decision to adopt and is going to pass to effectively take some elements of security into Beijing's hands. And yet all of that seems to have been swept away in this weekend of protests. President Trump appears to be consumed, understandably perhaps, with what's happening right on his doorstep, blaming Joe Biden, his opponent in the elections, blaming and also lashing out essentially at that minority of protesters. Some would say trying to divert attention away from the fact that he appears to have incited, appears to have fanned the flames for some of these protests, using extremely forceful language, including the phrase, when the looting starts, the shooting starts. Reportedly, even his own advisors were alarmed at that kind of language. And yet Trump appears to have doubled down on it by telling governors and law enforcement officials that he met with earlier this Monday he wants to see them using more force to put down these protests. Back to you.
All right, Owen, thank you for that update. Owen Fairclough live for us there in Washington, D.C. And you're watching Africa Live. Our first break, these are coming up. We'll look at how children are coping with COVID-19 restrictions as the International Children's Day is marked. The World Conference for the Well-Being of Children in Geneva, Switzerland, proclaimed June 1st to be International Children's Day back in 1925. It is usually marked with speeches on children's rights and well-being and other child-focused events. But this year, the coronavirus pandemic has dampened festivities. Most children are still at home dealing with lockdowns and other restrictions. CGTN's Julie Shire sat down with two sisters who live in Alexandra Township for some perspective from South Africa.
Growing up in Alexandra Township is tough.
Ria Betswe Majola and her sister Unati have been trying to get through the 2-month lockdown with household chores and watching TV. There's little else to do in the cramped room they share with their mother.
I'm so used to my routine, my daily routine, that when I sit home and just sit alone, I just think to myself a lot of things, like I start being like depressed, like of the things around me, because when I went outside, when I'm out there, I don't even stress about what's in here, so I feel a lot free out there than in here.
Schools in more affluent suburbs have resorted to remote online learning. The teen sisters do not have the luxury of expensive devices or unfettered internet access to keep up with their schooling.
You can't even go to school, and me being in matric, I need to go to school every day in order to maintain the marks that I need to go to varsity. So it's really, causing us like headaches, because we have to study at home and there's like no one to talk to when you can't understand. There's no one who'll explain for you. You just have to find a way to understand what you're doing alone.
The girls are eager to return to school. They hope their education will be their ticket out of poverty.
Just dream of getting out of here, taking my mom to Dubai, somewhere magical, to thank her for all she has done.
I want to be able to afford stuff. I want to be able to, in the future, if I have kids, I want them to have like everything, laptops to study on. Even if the corona comes back, their circumstances will be different from mine. Because for me, it's very hard to work here because there's not enough space and I don't have the correct resources. So I want to work hard for them so that they can get a better opportunity than mine.
More than 1.5 billion children worldwide have had their education disrupted by COVID-19 closures. In South Africa, learners are slowly returning to school under a cloud of uncertainty. Julie Shire, CGTN, Alexandra Township, South Africa. With schools closed in Kenya, children are forced to learn from home, but many don't have access to textbooks, let alone computers or the internet to access digital learning. This is the situation for many children in Kibera, an informal settlement in Kenya. Let's now join 13-year-old Sylvia Athiambo and the Shine Kibera team to understand the challenges facing young learners during the coronavirus lockdown.
With the coronavirus pandemic, schools are closed all over the world, and many children are learning from home. But how do you study if you don't have access to textbooks or a computer? This is the case for many children in Kibera, an informal settlement in Kenya. Join 13-year-old reporter Sylvia Adhiambo and the Shine Kibera TV team to understand the challenges facing youth in Kibera during the time of COVID-19.
Martha's family is among the needy in Kibera. They live in a single room made of mud. Her parents are not working. Her dad, who used to work at a construction site, lost his job recently because of the pandemic. The family cannot afford electricity, leave alone a computer or a smartphone. Martha is just going through what they learned at school before they closed.
Since COVID-19 was announced, I have not continued from where we left at school. I only have a maths textbook. That's what I am using.
Her worry is not only on her education, but also learning on an empty stomach.
I cannot participate well when my stomach is empty. We don't have smartphone. I can't access learning material from my teachers. I learn on my own.
At grade 7, Martha, like many other students from the informal settlement, cannot access e-learning materials. She cannot also visit a friend to learn together because it's safer at home.
Some things are difficult to understand, so I need a teacher or my friend to come and help me.
Many kids from well-off families continue learning online. But for Martha, she has to keep her hope alive by learning on her own. From Kibra, I am Sylvia Adhiambo.
Still in Kenya, an innovative partnership between the country's Curriculum Development Institute and Chinese media company StarTimes is enabling children to continue with their studies despite the lockdown. Educators and parents have welcomed the move since online teaching tools are inaccessible to many. Internet penetration remains low in informal settlements and rural areas in Kenya, but digital television access has been accelerating across sub-Saharan Africa. The CEO of StarTimes Kenya explained how a learning channel seeks to fill an education gap created by the pandemic.
KICD has a channel called Edu Channel, which has been transmitting through our platform. All users can watch it without paying. This allows kids to continue learning from home. If they miss any programs or episodes on TV, they can also catch up with our app called StarTimes On to review classes that have aired on TV.
A recap of our top stories at this hour. In the United States, protests and riots continue across the country. Curfews are largely being ignored in many cities as anger continues over the killing of an African-American man, George Floyd, by a white police officer in Minneapolis last week. National Guard troops have been deployed in 15 states and the capital in an attempt to restore order. Bernice King, the daughter of civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr., has said the protesters are trying to tell the world that there are still two Americas, black and white, and that this needs to change. Health officials have announced a second Ebola outbreak in the western part of the DRC as the disease was nearing its end in the east. 5 people have tested positive for Ebola and 4 of them have died in Bandeka city in Equatorial province. Authorities have taken these samples to the national laboratory in Kinshasa for further testing. And Africa has recorded more than 147,000 cases with nearly 62,000 recoveries. Africa continues to record the lowest death toll globally, which currently stands at over 4,000. And that's a look at our top stories this hour. Time now to catch up with the day's business news, and for that we cross over to Rama.
Thank you very much, Peninah. Here's what's coming up in business. The DRC's government suspends the board and management of its state-controlled diamond mining company. And South Africa's mining operations resume at full capacity from the start of June.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
Let us start in Africa's largest copper producer, the DRC. The government over there has suspended the board of directors and management of the state-controlled diamond mining company MIBA, M-I-B-A. Now, that suspension came after an audit revealed significant irregularities at that firm. The audit identified a host of problems in compliance, governance, production and financial management. Set up first in 1961, M-I-B-A is a former jewel in Congo's minerals industry with gold, nickel and copper in its portfolio, but years of mismanagement, illegal mining, smuggling and political instability have all hobbled the company's operations. Speaking of mining, in South Africa, mining operations are set to resume at full capacity as the country moved to level 3 of its lockdown on the 1st of June. Many mining companies restarted operations in May, ramping up to about 50% of production capacity. Here's CGTN's Angelo Coppola with the details.
Besides coal mines, the other commodity mines were in care and maintenance, waiting for the green light. But there are strict conditions, including screening, testing and isolation before full operations begin.
Not all of our people are coming back. From other countries, they're not allowed back for one. So roughly 10% of our workforce is not going to come back. We're also excluding those that are vulnerable, have preconditions like HIV/AIDS, silicosis. So we're going to operate roughly at 85% of the people. And once they've done all the screening testing, we suspect them all to be back within a week or 2 weeks. Only then can we look at bringing it closer to 100%.
The mines generally draw their local staff from the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal provinces.
Some districts in the Eastern Cape were identified as hotspots. That is a new dynamic that we've got to deal with now, because when we bring back the people from the Eastern Cape, we would need to put them into a quarantine facility for a period of 14 days.
Ramping up production in a safe environment is critical.
We are ready. We do have the COVID-19 compliance officers appointed. We have what you'd call the disaster mitigation rooms that have been set up to deal with whatever challenges that will be posed with the coming back of our employees.
So in terms of our mine, South Deep, I think we can be at about 100% of capacity within 2 to 3, maybe at the most 4 weeks from June 1 onwards.
One of the key challenges with the returning workforce is that more testing means more positive cases are being identified.
The perception that is created then in the communities is that mining activities are bringing COVID-19 into the communities, and now that becomes a bit of a threat for the mining activities in those particular communities. And basically what it means is that we need to intensify our education and information sharing with the different structures and stakeholders in those communities.
The pandemic has been a learning curve for the entire mining sector.
We've learned a few lessons. One, we've worked very, very closely with the unions on this one. Many of them are very supportive, and it's been a lot easier having the union on our side because it's gone smoother.
As the mining sector ramps up to that 100% production level, it's very likely that the pandemic has led to a different way of doing business in that sector. I'm Angelo Coppola for CG10 in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And we're still in Africa's most industrialized economy. The government over there has also announced a phased reopening of the tourism sector starting on the 1st of June. Now, the first phase of recovery will be driven mostly by domestic tourism, followed by regional tourist traffic and international tourist traffic in 2021. Here's CGTN's Sumitra Naidu with the details.
According to Stats SA, over 15.8 million people entered South Africa in 2019. This number covered regional and international travellers, a slight decrease from 2018, but still a substantial number of arrivals. Tourism is crucial to the South African economy, accounting for 8.6% of all economic activity and 1.5 million jobs, all of which hangs in the balance as a coronavirus lockdown continues.
I think we were just totally taken by surprise at how quickly it manifested and how quickly it impacted our business. So already by middle of March, we had our first inquiries as to whether clients could cancel or postpone. And since then, it's just been a snowball effect, and pretty much most of our business for the remainder of the year has been wiped off the projections.
Dragonfly Africa creates tailor-made travel experiences across a number of countries, but work stalled in March when all flights were stopped. The company is still uncertain as to when it will be able to reopen.
So we have been looking at ways to hold the staff together without having to go into retrenchment. So unfortunately, it does mean that we're going to have to look at layoffs.
Over 90,000 jobs may be lost within the South African tourism industry in the next 6 months, according to a Cape Town tourism report. The future of tourism is looking bleak, but Waller is still optimistic that soon millions of foreign visitors will return to African shores.
We're predicting a fantastic year next year. Like I said, we have everything that we were supposed to do next year, plus a good 70 to 80 million rands worth of postponed business on top of that. So that's really, it's all about actually getting to a situation where we know that that business will definitely come in. We know we'll be able to operate. We know that flights will still be coming to Africa.
Some flights may resume in June, but only for business travel.
Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic has hit the industry unbelievably hard. Business travel, to a large extent, is such an enabler of business for other sectors. And I think with the business travel sector being hit as hard as it has, it's really had a ripple effect on a lot of other companies and sectors within the South African economy.
South African tourism is expected to open in the coming months, but a strong revival will depend on the willingness of people to travel during COVID-19. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Away from the continent, Colombia is attempting to strike a very delicate balance in its battle against COVID-19. It's slowly easing lockdowns, but it's also maintaining one of the world's toughest travel bans. CGTN's Michelle Beguet filed this report from Bogota.
The government says this is all part of a health state of emergency in place until the end of August to curb the spread of COVID-19.
We have been following preventative isolation measures as a country, which allows us to put in place restrictions, but also allows the productive sector room to breathe.
Starting June 1st, sectors like retail and non-COVID-19 related medical care will begin to open up gradually. Partial reopening of construction and manufacturing sectors have already begun, with new safety protocols in place. While the government slowly reopens specific economic sectors, President Iván Duque has made it clear that this does not mean life will resume as normal.
I want to be emphatic. We are not going to revive social lives, of large social interactions, because we need to continue protecting health and life of all. And we also need to adapt to an illness that will present for a prolonged period of time.
President Duque gives daily updates on quarantine measures and says efforts to curb COVID-19 in the country are helping keep infection rates lower than some of its South American neighbors, like Brazil, Chile, and Peru. But that doesn't mean the country will be opening its borders anytime soon. Colombia joined Argentina this month in enacting one of the world's strictest travel bans, extending its grounding of all international flights through the end of August. Michelle Beguet, CGTN, Bogota, Colombia.
Now, there are some signs of life returning to normal in the United Kingdom as the public once again ventures outside to much warmer weather. But is it still a bit too soon to be doing this? CGTN's Andrew Wilson reports.
Such unusual sunshine in May was always going to bring the British public to the parks and beaches, but word of lockdown measures being lifted gave it that extra push. Plenty are clearly trying to socially distance, but still these images will mean sleepless nights for the scientists who cautioned against going too early. But with the economy in trouble, the government knows that doing nothing is no longer viable.
So we're making progress. Obviously, this is a sensitive moment, but we can't just stay in lockdown forever. We've got to transition, and the more we transition through careful steps, the more I think we'll build up confidence in the approach we're taking.
Scotland has taken similar measures, but the First Minister says she'll be treading carefully.
We've got to be very cautious. This virus hasn't gone away. There is still a significant risk that it could run out of control again. That's why in Scotland we are moving very slowly, very cautiously. We've just gone into phase 1 of our route map.
The government has also announced the return of sporting fixtures from Monday. The first horse racing will be Newmarket next Saturday. And Football League's Premier League is scheduled to restart June 17th. All televised, no crowds, no fans, no spectators.
Something that we need to continue to practice, and the kind of small numbers that we need to stick to as of Monday. And so this is how these guidelines begin to decay at the edges, and then this will cause trouble for all of us.
The biggest worry is the infection time lag. If the virus starts to spread again, it'll be 2 to 3 weeks before we notice. Andrew Wilson, CGTN, Oxford, UK.
And finally, in southwest China's city of Chongqing, a major export-oriented toy manufacturer is looking to expand its reach in the domestic market. And it's not just because international orders have been delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. CGTN's Wei Lin Tang has the details.
With an annual production of 150 million toys, this manufacturer claims itself as the largest in Western China. Topwin Toy Chongqing counts global fast food chains, fast-moving consumer goods, and entertainment companies as its clients.
Now, since this factory started churning out toys in the last 10 years, exports have accounted for almost all of its sales, finding their way to 180 countries. It was only in 2018 that the company decided to penetrate the local Chinese market. Domestic sales make up just about 5% of its total revenue, and it's looking to boost that figure.
Our goal is for the domestic market to account for 30% of our sales by 2021 and up to half our sales in 5 years.
The company has seen its international orders reduced and/or delayed by about 20% due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But this domestic market push came along even before the coronavirus outbreak and China-US trade spat.
In the last 2 to 3 years, we noticed growth in the international market has slowed. So we began to focus on developing products for the domestic market to make up for slower export orders. China is now the world's second largest toy market after the US, especially since the country opened up its two-children policy in 2016. Demand for toys has further increased.
But Liu says these days toys aren't just for children. Many adults are also collecting them to enhance their quality of life. Data show the retail volume of China's toy market stood at $10.7 billion in 2019, a 7.8% increase from the year before.
Chinese manufacturers account for about 75% of global toy supplies. With globalization and rising labor and raw material costs, we have to make strategic adjustments. We're building our research and development team, aiming to create our own brand and IP. By having our own brand, we can have autonomy. We can then sell these products to both foreign and local customers.
Topwin is now teaming up with local Chinese e-commerce and gifts players. In fact, it is one of the main mascot franchise suppliers for the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympic Games. The company has seen its revenue double in the past 4 years, hitting 360 million yuan in its latest financial year.
At this ecological industrial park, we currently only take 70,000 square meters of space, but we plan to increase that to 300,000 square meters in the next few years. We also plan to increase our staff from 2,000 now to 10,000.
Big dreams as it seeks to tap into what it calls the only just booming Chinese toy and gift industry. And this notwithstanding the cultural differences in handling overseas and local orders. Wei Lin Tang, CGTN, Chongqing.
And I'll leave it there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. We'll be in South Africa. Authorities over there have further eased one of the world's strictest COVID-19 lockdowns. So what is permitted and what isn't? We'll have some answers for you live at 1800 GMT from Johannesburg. See you then. For now, back to Peninah.
Thank you, Rama. You're watching Africa Live. Still ahead. Zimbabwean breakout movie film Cook-Off premieres on Netflix.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Zimbabwean breakout movie film Cook-Off premiered on Netflix on Monday. Its makers are banking on its debut on the world's leading entertainment streaming service to expose their growing film industry to the world, to global audiences. CGTN's Beryl Oro brings us that story.
I think I missed my chance. Life isn't fair, Shanae. You go to school, you have big dreams.
She's such a disappointment.
Zimbabwean film Cook-Off, a romance about a struggling single mother who finds love during a cooking competition, premiered on Netflix, a debut that its makers hope will propel the country's small film sector to global audiences.
You should enter, Mom. I really think you could do it. This is for professional chefs. I wouldn't stand a chance. What is it? We've entered you into the cooking competition. What?
Cook-Off being on Netflix, it's a big foot in the door. It's a big hello. This is Zimbabwe, we're here. It's an opportunity for us as Zimbabweans to introduce our content to the rest of the world, which, like I've met a lot of people from all over the world. When you say, oh, Zimbabwe, I'm a filmmaker, they're like, oh, really? I've never seen a film from Zimbabwe. So now we're in a position to say, oh, do you have Netflix? Right now, you can watch a film from Zimbabwe. Because back then, we didn't have that big a platform for you to get recognized. And for us, it's a very big feat, because considering, like, I think there are only maybe 3 countries in the whole of Africa that are on Netflix, if you think about it. And here we are, we've made it onto the platform. So it's really a big deal to us.
Zimbabwe often grabs headlines for its economic woes and political crises, but Njago would like to present his country in a new light, away from the plagued view.
I wanted the world to know that there's more to Zimbabwe than what they hear. We also fall in love. We also enjoy nice food. We also have very nice stories.
This was all a mistake.
One last thing.
With a production budget of only $8,000, he used his personal relationships with the cast, the crew, and equipment hire companies to sign deferred contracts. Until Netflix, the world's leading entertainment streaming service with 189 million paid viewers, came knocking 2 months ago.
I didn't think you were a quitter. I can say yes, we've made a return on investment from the production. We're now able to pay the deferred bills we had, the cast and the crew. You know, everyone can get paid from it. And like, I don't want to lie, we should appreciate the Netflix deal, because that would probably, it might have happened later or taken longer, but for now it has happened through the Netflix deal.
We're eliminating the weakest each week.
The low-budget film was shot in 2017 and has won several awards at international film festivals, including Netherlands and the United States. The film creators are now in talks with Netflix about possible future productions. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
And ahead in sports. Boxing coach Jeanette Dazzle on a mission to find South Africa's Olympic talents.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Boxing is still very much a male-dominated sport, even at Olympic level. But a top female coach and referee in South Africa is determined to change this. Jeanette Dazzle wants to produce the country's first professional female boxer to compete at next year's Games. CGTN's Julie Shire tells us more.
Jeanette Dazzle started out as a secretary for a boxing club, but now packs a powerful punch. She fought her way to the top in 23 years and rates among the best coaches and referees.
It took me quite a while because, remember, it's a male-dominant sport, and I had a lot of obstacles to go by because male don't want to sit aside and you can take all the limelight. So I had a lot of obstacles, but that actually makes me more determined to get my goal and to achieve my goal.
The super coach has trained more local champions than anyone else in the country. She's hoping to improve on this by producing the first female Olympic boxer.
I would like to set an example for all the younger women in South Africa and in Africa, that there is a way to overcome all the difficulties that we have as women, to become better than the men in the sport. And it's a good thing because it learns you motivation, it learns you self-discipline, and it learns you self-defense.
Dizelle is also hunting a personal milestone. She's the only woman to qualify as a 2-star referee and is looking to up her game.
I need seriously to go for a Star 3 course to qualify, because only Star 3 officials can participate at Olympic Games as officials. So I need to go for a Star 3 course, and I need some international experience at this stage. That I think Africa is a little bit behind with that, but we need some exposure and international exposure.
If Jeanette succeeds in coaching and refereeing at the 2021 Games, it may pique interest in the sport and encourage more young women to get into the ring. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Brazilian giants Vasco da Gama have revealed that 16 of their players have tested positive for the coronavirus. The Rio de Janeiro outfit says the positive